nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid podcast. It is September 14th, just moments after Real Madrid go into Real Anoeta Stadium and beat Real Sociedad by 2-0. It was not the greatest performance. We had a couple penalties. We got the job done. A penalty from Vinny and then a penalty from Mbappe. And we're going to break it all down. Siddharth Ramsundar is here with me, Kian Sobani, to do this. What's up, Sid? Welcome. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. I'm glad we won. It could have been a very annoying. It almost turned into one of those annoying post-international break afternoons. And if we didn't get the points today, especially like the third out of the first 5 games, it would have been bad. But glad we got the win. Those handballs were really big. The foul was big. The one handball, I should say.
Ugly 3 points. We'll take it, and we will be happy with the result. Not necessarily with the performance. I did want to give a quick shout out before we start to moji-mates.com. That's MOJI-MATES. Moji-mates.com. Today we got Fede Valverde. Rocking the Fede Valverde. And if you use code MM15 off on the website, you get 15% off. And you got a ton of cool things to choose from. You got Noodle Hair Cristiano. You got France, Zinedine Zidane. You got Ronaldo Nazario with Brazil. You got all these cool shorts. You got all these cool shirts that you can get for your kids. You got an Alfredo Di Stefano bubble-free sticker. How cool is that? And so many cool things. Every single player you can imagine. Gareth Bale, Zidane, Messi, if that suits your fancy. Mbappe, Neymar, Modric, Beckenbauer. And it goes on and on. MM15 off for 15% off your order at moji-mates.com. Siddharth, I believe this is your first podcast appearance. I mean, you've been active on Real Deal Pods a ton. This is your first podcast with me since Chicago. We were together, taking in the Chicago preseason stuff. So I haven't really had a chance to talk to you about Real Madrid season so far. So it'll be cool to get your perspective. Does this performance basically fall in line with the previous performances of we haven't really seen improvements? Probably the Betis game was our best game so far. I don't know if this one was linear progression since then.
Yeah, Betis was just double confirming. That was the last one, right? The one where Mbappe finally got on the score sheet. Yeah, okay. No, this didn't get better. And I guess if there's a game like after the first 4 where you know it won't get better, it has to be this one because just coming off an international break, historically, like no matter what team you have, the first one especially, it's just hard because it's early in the season. As a team, you haven't built full cohesion. You just finished like your full preseason, and then they're like, all right, like South Americans go to South America, Europeans go play with these random players who you don't really need to build cohesion with for a couple of years. These games are just fully out of context. And I remember so many games. I remember once like we came back from the international break and we played Bilbao. They pressed us like crazy. And Sociedad is kind of the last team I want to play off the international break. So I had no expectations, Kian, coming into this game. And even the biggest haters of Carlo, like the biggest haters of the build-up structure, the biggest pessimists, you have to admit, like, this is a hard game away. And so I wasn't expecting better. That's where, like, I'm not upset. But, yeah, we did not get better.
It's a hard game on the schedule in theory. And obviously it turned out to be a hard game because it's Real Sociedad. It's at Anoeta. It's the first game back after the international break. You have a million injuries. Your midfield and defensive line is decimated. Having said that, we did an entire Real Sociedad preview podcast yesterday, Jose and I. And this is not a very good version of Real Sociedad. Let's put it this way. They've just lost Mikel Merino in the offseason. They've lost Robin Lenormand, and they're not exactly firing on all cylinders. They recently had a game against Getafe where they had an unbelievably low XG of 0.02, courtesy of one shot the entire game from 40 yards from Umar Sadiq. So it's not like I was expecting this to be that difficult of a game based on those reasons. And look, we're Real Madrid. Like, we should be performing. Like, it's one thing to come away with a narrow 2-0 loss. Or, sorry, 2-0 win. It felt like a loss for a second. A 2-0 win, and you just dominated, or you played really well. But we didn't feel that way, We didn't feel like we played well in this game at all. And I think there's just so many things that, regardless of who you have on the pitch, because look, I understand that you're missing Bellingham and Camavinga, and you're still trying to come to grips with how to replace Toni Kroos, which you haven't been able to play well without him yet, from a ball progression standpoint anyway. And really, the only game that I think we looked actually good in was Betis, and specifically probably the second half, although the first half there were strides. It did look a little bit better in the first half in that game in terms of the connection between Vinicius and Mbappe and the more symmetrical approach and the more defined roles. But in this particular game, there's no excuse for... You got to explain this pressing thing to me, because it's not a press. It's a couple of players deciding, like, should we press or should we walk around? Whatever they decide, it's a disaster, because if they do decide to press, the rest of the team is like, yo, we weren't expecting this. Why are you pressing now? It's like a numerical advantage for Real Sociedad. They have a transition attack out of nothing. Like, it should never be a transition attack when you have all 11 men behind the ball for a second. That should never happen. And so that has happened all season. It happened again today a couple times. One of them led to, I think one of them was the Sucic crossbar in the first half. So that's a problem. And the second problem is the amount of prolific turnovers, whether it was Mendy, whether it was Rudiger, whether it was Arda Güler taking a really heavy touch in the box in the wrong direction when Kubo was right there pressing you, and a bunch of other sequences where we gave the ball away cheaply. And so those two things happening in conjunction, just a really bad place to be in. We conceded a lot of clear-cut chances from those mistakes.
Yeah. I can't tell right now if the defense is bad alone, or if it's also bad because offensively we're just way worse at progressing the ball right now. It's just like with Tchouaméni gone now this game, like, I can't blame the team. Again, like, I know Sociedad aren't as good a team, but they've always traditionally been a team that knows how to stifle us, like at least match us a little bit, not let us progress too easily. And they're a team that likes attracting the press. And against a team like this, when you don't have Kroos, you're used to being able to progress with certain mechanisms. No Tchouaméni either, so you're playing this Modric Fede double pivot, which is not a lineup we want to use in too many games, but in a game, La Liga game, I guess it's okay. But I feel like maybe we're not getting to the final third in the situations we want. Maybe we're losing the ball and turning it over in situations we're not used to. So maybe before last year we had a mechanism for deciding, okay, do we press or not? And it wasn't great. We haven't ever defended that well under Ancelotti, like throughout his time at this club. To be honest, we haven't really defended well throughout my time as a fan of this club. But I feel like it's harder now because you're giving the ball away in situations where, okay, maybe you go for it, maybe you don't, or you're not getting the ball to the final third a lot. So when you don't have it, suddenly you get desperate. And I see flashes of that too. I feel like sometimes you can't disconnect what's happening defensively from what's happening offensively. And and I feel like it's a weird game in that sense because we had a lot of bad sequences. And I tweeted Modric did a good game, and some people are disagreeing with me. I'm looking at the stats. Like, even though he turned it over a lot, he still was so important in so many sequences. I think that speaks to how uncomfortable we are just getting the ball to the final third. And I think also on top of that, Mbappe is really not the best defender. And I think that also, so whatever we try to do when he's involved, it also just comes across worse. Like, it's pretty jarring seeing it with your own eyes in white,
The initial defensive line which starts with your forwards. If everyone's behind the ball, they're your first line of defense. They're the ones who press or possibly go into a mid block or a low block. They're the ones who dictate what happens behind you in a lot of ways. And I think in this season, it's worse than I thought it was going to be in terms of how badly it was going to impact our defense with those two not defending. And those two, I obviously mean Mbappe and Vinicius. So Carlo has to get it ingrained in, like, guys, we need more from you guys defensively. In the past, he had Vinicius being the only one who doesn't defend. And he could tell Vinicius by design, look, I actually don't want you to defend because I want you to conserve your energy. I want you to be prepared to act as an outlet to help us get the ball up the field in transition and be right there when we need you when we do win the ball. Now you have two players who are not defending. And so we got to come up with some kind of balance to figure that out. Modric, I actually would generally agree with you. I thought he had a good game. In terms of his distribution was probably the best. But I think it's hard to come away from this blaming one individual player because it's a whole bunch of things happening. So if you want to say Modric had a bad game or a good game, you want to say Güler had a good game or a bad game, it really doesn't matter. What is happening now is that there's a whole structural imbalance. And look, to be fair, our team is decimated with injuries. So right now you don't have Tchouaméni or Camavinga. So your option A as the 6 and option B as a 6 are both gone, which meant and in years past, Kroos would have taken the mantle as playing quarterback, and he could have been interchangeable with one of the other midfielders. So he's gone too. So Fede played the 6 today, and that's not his best role. So if he had a bad game, which I didn't think he had a good game, just compared to his lofty standards anyway, I can't really sit here and blame him that much because he's playing. Like, one of the things that would have really helped us today is Fede getting in between the lines and helping progress the ball and being as an outlet for Modric to hit, or Güler when he drops deep to hit. But he couldn't do that today because he was playing so deep. So you lost the essence of Fede because you couldn't get the best out of him. While you explain what you're going to share here on the screen, I'm going to go grab my iPhone charger. 1 sec.
Sounds good. Let me put this up here. So as a receiver, you see Vinny and Mbappe. We actually did a decent job like accessing them in the final third. This game, I thought, like there are games against Sociedad where we don't do that at all. And there were points, especially after the 20th minute in the first half, we did a decent job accessing them. So I wanted to put that there. And you see Rodrigo also after coming on. That's a pretty decent figure by him. Offensively, just want to show Modric was by far our best passer, and Fede is like a little worse than him. Didn't have his best game. The lack of danger is kind of telling. Like Rudiger's here. Like you have a lot of Sociedad players: Sergio Gomez, Kubo, Arambaru. These are the guys creating the most threat. So it's a little concerning that from a playmaking perspective, we were so reliant on Luka. I guess that's how I felt, at least watching the game. And he still had to do like some of his really high technique moves. Anyways, going to the XG, 2-0. It is better when you look at it this way, but I guess the penalties are a big part of it. Before the penalties, we were getting outplayed. Sociedad created their first expected goal. Pretty much all their chances, actually, before we won our penalty. So it's good that we were able to win the game, calming things down. But it was a tough game. Progression-wise, what else do we want to say here? Stats-wise, I guess Fede statistically doesn't look bad. It's also good looking to why statistics are not always reliable. Like Fede, good progression game in terms of tidiness, good defensive game. Didn't really carry the ball too much, didn't drive it, and very conservative. Anytime someone was trying to get more aggressive, it was Modric. But yeah, Keon, just showing that like Vinny and Mbappe received it a lot, but our passers just didn't have the best game. Like you can see here, Modric is huge, and then nobody, like the top three are Sociedad players before we even get to him. So I feel like as a team, that's kind of damning that we didn't do too well. And yeah, I mean, the XG was 2.3 to us 1.2 them. But yeah, just filling you in.
So Ancelotti after the game actually spoke about the ball progression issues, and he said that our output and what he's saying there, because I think the word, like, once it gets translated, he's talking about like the outlet ball, the ball, the first ball out of the back. He said that was not good, and he said it's because Real Sociedad pressed us very well, and that we did end up finding the free player enough. I'm not sure if I would necessarily agree with that, but this is not the first time Ancelotti has been critical of the performance after the game this season, because he said that we didn't play well and we didn't deserve to win, and that Real Sociedad played very well. So at the very least, he's cognizant that there are problems, and that's at least a good sign. Look, you just hope that the team is going to look way better as the season progresses, because the way we're playing now is not sustainable, and it's not going to lead to enough good results to take home trophy. So it needs to improve. There's no question. And we need to figure out how to get the ball up the field without our best midfielders, and that's going to be a challenge. So when you don't have Bellingham and Camavinga, Tchouameni is the other one I didn't even mention that we don't even have, that would help with ball progression in theory, although his performances have been hit or miss this season apart from the Betis game. It needs to improve regardless. And I just don't know how many times we can come and sit here and say, well, this is the excuse today. We're missing this player. We're missing that player. The structure just can't fall apart every time. And so far, we haven't figured out a way to solve these issues of the turnovers, the bad pressing, the inability to get the ball up the field and link the midfield and attack and get into meaningful goal scoring positions. I'm assuming, like, while I was gone, you were going over some of the numbers and the analytics and the XG. What was the XG tonight, out of curiosity?
Well, as I just said, they're 2.3. It was 2.3 to 1.2 according to Mark Stats, or Mehdi's thread has us at 2.3 again, and they're
including the penalties.
Yeah. But the crucial thing is they were at, like, they created all their XG before we had even scored, so they could have easily been up 1-0. And then that was big. And then I guess the other thing that stands out, like, Modric was our highest progressor. Fede was, like, pretty low by our second highest progressor standards, 0.12 expected threat. Usually you'd expect our second, third progressors to have double that, like, mathematically, usually 0.2 or something. Goulet also didn't really have his best game. Didn't really do anything. Like, he did nothing. And, it felt like he was caught in between, like he was playing higher up, but it feels like we need him deeper sometimes.
What has tended to happen when Goulet is on the field is that the other two midfielders tend to drop into a double pivot, and then he goes mostly, like, higher up the pitch on the right. And so it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic. I don't feel like we have that version of it on the other side. And that, look, Camavinga solves a lot of this, but there does seem to be, like, confusion of what his role is, because sometimes he was dropping deep to help play quarterback. Sometimes he was getting up the field. Sometimes he was receiving cutbacks in the box. But again, like, a lot of these players, I think we have to realize that are also just kind of learning these new roles. Like, Goulet is not a midfielder by trade. If Ancelotti wants him to play there, and he has said that he can, then it might be a learning curve for him. In terms of Goulet not doing anything or how he played, I thought he did have a couple good balls into Mbappe. And he did have a couple moments where he escaped pressure really well under traffic and was able to keep possession. But it wasn't his best game either. And I thought all of this was connected, whether it was Fede being a little bit sloppy in his role, whether it was Goulet not sure where he's supposed to be positionally, and then everyone's giving the ball away. Defensive structure is terrible. Vinny having a really poor game on the left. He couldn't get past really anyone on the wing, whether it was, usually he'll have, like, a couple where he gets past his man and he'll create something. Today, I don't really remember any, and I'd have to look at the numbers to see if I'm wrong about that. But whether it was Aramburu or Zubeldia coming over to that side, Kubo playing really good defense on the wing, Zubimendi dropping in that position, Aguerd sometimes coming all the way over, they pretty much were able to limit Vinny's influence, and Mbappe was going to the right. I'm curious to know what you thought of the attack post and pre Brahim getting substituted due to an injury, due to yet another injury. it kind of sucks that Brahim got injured. I thought he actually played well. He set up Mbappe a couple times, and he provided some good width on that side. And between him and Goulet and who's the other one there was a third player, Mbappe would go to the right a lot, especially in the first half. They were overloading that right side quite a bit, and it kind of sucks that Brahim came out. But did you see any difference with Rodrigo? For what it's worth, I thought Rodrigo's first touch and control were pretty good, but we just didn't get enough good, clear goal scoring opportunities. And I think this also goes back, Sid, to the fact that there was like a 3-minute period in the first half from minute 20 to 23, around that range, where we were counter pressing and Real Sociedad were really uncomfortable. They couldn't escape the third. And we just didn't go back to doing that. And I was like, if you had one period in the first half where it looked kind of successful, you need to expand on that and double down and do more of that. But we didn't really get much of that. So yeah, just kind of all over the place here, but there was a lot that was just circulating in my head with regards to this performance.
Yeah, I mean, like just tying it into the trends of the season, I feel like the good of the game was, I feel like even if Vinny and Mbappe created a little bit on the ball, there were a couple moments when he was able to dribble, do something surprisingly a little more effective on the ball. Vinny, not a big on the ball game, a little different to what we've seen this season, where so far it's been a lot of like Vinny gets the creation while Mbappe tries to take the shots. So more of the balance. They didn't interchange the best, but yeah, I liked Mbappe coming to the right. Well, when you look at the starting lineup, on paper, it looked like it could build up well because Brahim, 2-footed, as of now, he's our best right-sided attacker. Like, he's not even like a pure right footer, but because he's so fast with his first touch and comfortable with both feet and just comfortable driving it wide, something Rodrigo usually isn't that comfortable doing. And Goulet just isn't like a ball carrier to the degree that Brahim is. So I see Brahim with the ability to go wide, right? Goulet, who can kind of drop. You think that's enough compliments to Modric, Fede, where they figure something out and build up. But I think, and they did access the right more, because with Cruz gone, we have our left side is just not the same. A lot of people have pointed it out. I don't know. Cruz just had a way of like turning Ferland Mendy's complete lack of threat into some sort of danger by either continuously exchanging passes with him, like stationing him somewhere, and he had the body language. He also
his own positioning of always being an outlet for Mendy to hit, and Mendy doesn't have that outlet anymore.
Yes, and Mendy was one of the like most accurate passers in Europe last year because, like, just as a guy I know that was his job, like to just play it safe because they don't want him doing anything dangerous. But Cruz just elevated him to the point where he almost never lost the ball and almost never hurt the team too much. That's gone, and so I think the reason the right-hand side sequences made sense is like you have Modric, Fede, Brahim, Goulet like cutting in from the right. They're all more comfortable on the right, and Carvajal is still a really good build-up right back. I know some people are angry at Rudiger and Militao, but Carvajal still, like, I guess Militao is good, but sometimes Rudiger and Militao tend to rush it from the back. They don't have the pausa that maybe Alaba does, and so Carvajal does a great job coordinating with Modric on the right as well. And there's some sequences, I feel like a lot of those things, like after the 20th minute, those moments, a lot of it was just Modric going and conducting the right, which he doesn't do on the left and Cruz doesn't do anymore. And that's why I think we shift to the right. And it makes sense to me Mbappe receives a bit there. The reason I'm not upset that we didn't play well, even with the talent, is because I feel like we're trying to make Tchouaméni and Fede more of the reference points and build up. And now Tchouaméni is sitting, no Bellingham. You have to keep changing it. And so with Modric, it's always going to be a little more right-sided. What if Modric is gone, though? Then you can't lean in on him doing that magic on the right with Carvajal. You need to, maybe Tchouaméni needs to be a bit more left-sided. And that's where I feel like Carlo, like before it was just one system, the Cruz system. You give it to him and you let things happen. Now, depending on the game, it's either like the game where Modric is helping the guys grow, but he's not there every game. And I think that's why I'm not that upset. Like, it's not going to look great. Like, how many times are we going to play this lineup? We're not going to play this lineup every week. What if next week we go back to Tchouaméni and they haven't had enough reps and it doesn't look good again? I wouldn't be surprised is all I'm saying. And within the context, like we just survived. I'm glad we survived. It could have been better, but you just take the 3 points and live with it, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's the glass half full outlook, is that Tchouaméni and Bellingham will be back very soon, as will Camavinga, and that in itself solves a lot of problems in theory, unless you factor in maybe a little bit more time for them to get acclimatized and get match fit, and then there's that grace period as well. But I think part of the problem too, Sid, is that you look at the bench tonight, and it's like, okay, you see all these problems with the ball progression, and you're like, so who can you bring in off the bench in the second half to help with that? And here are the names. And just as a just to point it out right away, none of these names are going to help with that, but I'm going to name them anyway. Endrick, Lucas Vazquez, Andre Lunin, Jesus Vallejo, Fran Garcia, Sergio Mestre, and Chema Andres. So there's no one in the second half that you're bringing. You have to bring people in because you need bodies and fresh legs. That's pretty much what the Vazquez for Goulart sub was in a lot of ways. Is like just getting there and just track and make sure we get this W. But there's no like real person off the bench because you're so decimated. And by the way, the player we haven't mentioned yet, who in a lot of ways is public enemy number one, and a lot of people just don't like him within the fan base, is Dani Ceballos, who also was not a body you could have used today to help at least with the energy and also the ball progression. That's what we're down to at this point. We're down to Fede as the 6 with Modric and Goulart beside him, and we have no options off the bench to help. So that is the reality of the situation. That's the glass half full outlook. But there were a lot of just weird mistakes in this game, irrespective of who's in the team. Like that sequence where Sucic hits the post within like 40 seconds of the second half. Like, okay, let's see the team talk, Carlo. Let's see the team come out with energy, and then Real Sociedad hit the post like less than a minute into the second half. That sequence, Militao comes over, and for whatever reason, just doubles up. I think it was Kubo on that side, who I thought had a good game. Very impressed with his composure, his shoulder drops, his ability to wait to find the right pass in the box. Very incisive player. Militao comes over and doubles up unnecessarily, which frees up Sucic wide open in the right half space. And then Fede does nothing to track him in that moment. And all of a sudden he's free. Our set piece defending remains a nightmare. It's been a nightmare for years. Even when we had Ramos and Varane and Casemiro and Bale and Cristiano, like we still couldn't defend. It was always free headers. I don't know what's going on with that. That's just in our DNA. So that was a problem too. Funny enough, Jose was mentioning before the pod, on the preview pod yesterday, that if we're going to exploit Real Sociedad, they're actually not very good defending in the air. So we kind of saw that with that Rudiger free header off the Modric set piece in the first half, where I think he could have done a little bit better, but he headed it right at the keeper. So yeah.
I guess like the thing with the giveaways is like at some point we need to decide like how we're going to build up, and we need to decide, okay, we're like, when you get the ball, we all get out of the way, and whoever is like that reference needs to be calm, and they need to have knowledge of enough scenarios, and they need to be good at scanning, and it's just so much. But I think Carlo can do better for sure. I think but I've been saying the same thing on X since the season started for like 5 weeks now, which is
you call it X. I still haven't been able to call it X even after all this time.
I just called it X now. That's the first thought I had when I said it. I'm like, that sounded funny coming out of my mouth. But it's probably the first time I've called it X with a straight face like that. But the point is, I feel like the Carlo timeline was October. It's just the timeline being October is something I've thought about going back to his first season, 13-14. Like, I remember following the team then, and Bale's first game, we drew 2-2 against Villarreal. And they're like, Carlo hasn't figured it out. And Bale didn't play the first few weeks of the season. So it's like, I think around now, like after the first international break, he played Villarreal. And I just remember then too, reading about how Carlo hadn't found the system. And then he took a while. I think that season took till November, December before Di Maria and midfield really happened. That was a bit longer. So yeah, that's the timeline when Carlo's new to the team. This is a new team fundamentally in the first and second phases. And it's it's still a very different team to what we've experienced for 10 years. And so his second season, 14-15, we lost Di Maria. Cruz came in, and he found the system it took him till about October. So I feel like when you have a big midfield change, you got to give Carlos 6 to 7 weeks. Even last season, I know like if people are like in such a rush to panic, but we didn't find our like optimal system till like October, November either. Like even the first Clasico, we didn't look that good for long stretches. And early in the season, it was Bellingham hero ball. But if you remember, like after like around November, we saw a shift where we went a little bit away from like ping it to Bellingham, ping it to Ozulu, overload. And then we started playing a little more like ball to feet in the half spaces, drag the center backs out of position, interchange. And that took some time to realize, okay, like we can't have Jude just keep making late runs. That's not how we're going to win games. So I expect a similar timeline now. Like, and the thing is, the injuries stretch it out. When I thought we'd be good in like 2 more weeks from now, but then someone gets injured every week. There's clearly something there. I guess we can touch on that before we end. But I just think when you add an injury and you add it to like guys like Ceballos, like you said, we had nobody off the bench. If there was like a chance of, okay, at least we can pick a system, rotate a guy out. No, it didn't happen. Now we're playing Modric 90 minutes today. Like, I don't think they wanted to play Modric 90 minutes.
Yeah, they had no choice.
They had no choice, right? So
the team today was picked by default. There was, I mean, apart from the Brahim over Rodrigo one.
Yeah, and like we're way too early in the season with a new system to have high expectations when the team is picking itself. And like last season, we still had 8-9 weeks before the midfield got injured. Right now, it feels like we're experiencing that period when Camavinga and Tchouaméni were out. It's happening way earlier than even last year. And regarding the injuries, they're definitely concerning. If they continue like this, we're very high possibility we don't win either of the major trophies. We're not like the margin for error is small this season. Like I guess Barcelona might be slightly better, but even if they're the same, we've already dropped more points than we did at this stage last year. What's your was Brahim? Was that another knee injury? What happened to him today?
I don't think it was knee. I mean, I could be wrong because in the moment, it was hard to tell. But I think he was clutching his calf. Is from what I gather. I don't think it was his knee. There was also another concerning moment where Militao was clutching the same knee he tore his ACL. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was.
So hopefully that doesn't turn out to be anything tomorrow when we all wake up. But
didn't Militao get injured or something over international break? But he recovered, or was that not?
No, that was. I don't blame you necessarily for not knowing, but it was like one of the other 800 players who got injured during the international break. Here's Carlos' quote on Brahim. Quote, he has a problem with his adductor muscle. We will evaluate him tomorrow. I think that the 2 center backs can rotate in the next few games. This was a game where we were missing almost the entire midfield. We were in an emergency situation. In the next few games, we can rotate a little more.
Yeah. Hopefully we can. I mean, we kind of have to. I don't think the Pintus method was designed to play the same team week in, week out until you don't want to do it until April, May.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know why this has become slightly controversial. I don't know, but one of the reporters asked Carlo about what were your thoughts on Vinicius' celebration when he scored? And Ancelotti said, I'd rather keep my opinion to myself. He says, I don't have an opinion and I'd rather keep it to myself. I didn't see anything controversial about Vinny's celebration. All he did was do the Raul shush celebration. I
didn't either. I thought the second one was funny. It was like a little awkward.
The second one was good. It showed good harmony. I mean, there's no positive.
Timing was off, though. The timing was off.
The timing was off. Who cares?
They need to work on the chemistry.
It was wholesome. When the timing is off, it actually becomes a little bit more wholesome. But there was no positive to take away from this game apart from the W. But the one thing that is cool that it's not a problem at all so far is that they're just Vinny and Mbappe are just alternating penalties and hugging each other, which I'm totally cool with. That's a good outcome of this. Of all the concerns, it's who's taking the penalties? This is Vinny's team, but Mbappe is coming over and he's used to taking it, so this works out.
I will say the pessimists. This is a game for the pessimists to take note of. I know we drew 2 games already, but Vinny and Mbappe, I guess if you had to attribute the goals, who do you attribute it to? Vinny got fouled for one. The other one was just a kind of a random handball, right? Who shot that? Maybe one of the
It was either Modric
or Fede
or Fede, because it was on the right side, and I think it was a right-footed shot.
Yeah, I mean, we still saw enough. Like, I think Mbappe had that one shot earlier in the game too when he got saved. Like, we still saw enough to see that those two solved 95% of issues. Like, we just have to fix that first to second phase thing. But even games where you don't have it, you'll win. It's just weird coming off last season where we had the first two phases were good, and sometimes we were a little confused in the final third. And I guess we still had games with Cruz where we looked bad. But
why don't we talk about Mbappe's performance?
Well, it's just like I feel like his performances are going to be very up and down this season without a 9, like without a Joselu. When he's the reference point, I don't love him there. And he gets free, though. He's so fast. He always gets free a couple times per game. I like how much this forces the other team to sit deep. Like these two, it's really, really hard for them to press us in any way without them finding some space at some point. I feel like we need to do a better job taking advantage of that, playing those through balls. And I think it'll look better when Bellingham's back too. Right now, there's just no tall guy who can play back to goal. Like it's so awkward when he's back to goal, but he's still so good. It's like we've seen Cristiano some seasons start where it's like we don't have the system down, but he's still so dangerous. It feels like that.
So I think one of the things that is getting overlooked a little bit, that despite all of that, despite the lack of offensive synergy, despite the lack of that reference point, a traditional reference point, Mbappe is getting into a bunch of good goal scoring positions. So his XG in the league before this game was 3.5. And he has 2 goals to show for in the league. And then tonight, his XG was 0.8. That includes the penalty, I think. So he's almost at he's at 4.5 XG in the league, not obviously counting the Atalanta game. And the weird thing about him is that he's doing some things that are like, okay, this is vintage Mbappe. Like that sequence, but he's not scoring those chances where he gets them. So that sequence where he absolutely torches, was it Aran? Let me check. I wrote it down who it was. I think it was Aranburu. Yeah. And he torched Aranburu a couple times in this game. But in the 38th minute, he just cooks Aranburu in the box and he gets to the byline. And he tries to score from an acute angle. He should have just cut it back to Goulet, who was wide open. So I think, and the other time he cooked Aranburu in the second half, then he's in transition. It's exactly where you want him to be. He's attacking, backpedaling defenders with a ton of space. And instead of just linking up and making the right pass, he just dribbled into traffic and lost it. There were a couple moments like that where I think he's just not 100% sharp with his decision making yet. Although you can kind of see the glimpses of like, oh yeah, shit, this is why he's so good.
It just feels like a guy who played under Luis Enrique, and he's like, oh wait, like we have freedom, and oh wait, like I don't need to be told, or like he's just like learning how to score at Real Madrid, which is you combine with your teammates. There's no rules, but you have to, when you see, like he's not sure where the advantages need to be attacked all the time. That's what I see. Like not just him though. Like it's just a result of, again, so many injuries and so much lack of continuity. Because I feel like Jude is, along with Vinny, is a big way. Like those two are almost perfect with their decision making in transition. Jude especially, like because he can kind of act as the guy who pins the center backs because he's so tall and can head the ball, but he can also play back to goal. He can also dribble, and he can also play that threaded ball as a deeper midfielder. So without him, I feel like we don't have the same decision making. And last season maybe Jude or Joselu was always there as that reference. There's no reference now. You don't have the whole system where Jude drops, the wingers go in behind. And without that reference, it can be confusing. Like Mbappe gets it, where maybe a Benzema would do a quick 1-2. Mbappe is not quite sure what to do, how to use his speed. Maybe he keeps running, doesn't know when to stop. And I think that's what's going on. Like I saw a sequence when Goulet, Brahim, Mbappe, Vinny, there was like early, it was really awkward from minute 20 to 30 because on one hand, we were winning all the balls they gave us. They were giving it away. We were counter pressing. Modric got it up. But once it like left Modric and Fede, those four didn't know how to play. Like Vinny kind of had an idea, but it was a little awkward. There was like no reference point who once they got the ball, you move around him. There was no like reference scheme where you create danger. And they just need to watch more tape with, I think, Benzema and Vinny and last season. I think they need to watch more tape. They need to practice more, just spend more time on the training ground doing like a transition drill together, and it'll come. They're too dangerous. Like that's why I'm like not that upset. I'm like, okay, so they have no idea how to play together, but Mbappe still like got in the end of those chances. That's what I'm taking away, because you realize you make a 20-30% improvement to that second phase, and then we're looking at a lot more chances, I think. Or you just like improve. If you do that improvement, these guys exchange passes faster. Sometimes there's an element of them thinking once they get the ball, they're like, okay, what do I do? Or they just release it too fast too. I think that's the biggest thing. You see them get the ball and they just play a quick 1-2, and you're like, hey, wait, there was a through ball on, but you're trying to play the Real Madrid way. You're just not sure what your teammates want to do, their preferences. So it comes out awkward. I think it'll get better, but they need to like, again, be on the training ground. And some of it is on Carlo. He just needs to go like study the players' strengths and do a little bit of what Pep does. I hate to say it. And like find exact sequences that work for them.
Yeah, I would say a lot is on Carlo. A lot is on the players, but a lot is on Carlo to figure out a lot of these things that the team just hasn't been good at for years, even when they have everybody healthy. Let's take a quick super chat from Sagnik, who says, how good was Cruz really? Any other guy with Tony's style of play with zero pace and athleticism would have retired after one game of playing in our midfield. That proves exactly how great he was, because look at what it looks like without him. Look, it's just a lot of it was statistically backed, but a lot of it was intangible stuff, like just the amount you could control and slow down time and manipulate elite pressing with just his ability to shield the ball, to control possession, to shoulder drop, to turn the right way under pressure. Like you could put out an 1 hour compilation of Cruz turning the right way with his first touch out of pressure. Like that stuff you can't really teach. A lot of it's instinctual. And look, we're going to talk about him after every game, probably. At this rate.
He just saw 1 to 2 passes ahead of the sequence, while also being able to do what it takes to like successfully execute. And right now, a lot of our players are one or the other. Like maybe they can see 1 to 2 passes ahead, but then it's too much for them to process what to do now while they're thinking about it. Or they execute this sequence, but they're not thinking 1 to 2 passes ahead, which is what we've seen in transition sometimes, and it doesn't turn into anything. It's a rare skill. Modric has it. We need more guys to have it. Or Carlo needs to go teach them and put them in situations where they're so comfortable doing it on practice that they can see it. Cruz just could see it no matter who you're playing against, which was crazy.
Concluding thoughts? I have some, but I want to shoot it to you first.
Concluding, just I'm expecting, I don't know who we're playing, but I just expect more ugliness.
Stuttgart.
Yeah, oh, that's not an easy.
And you're on the post-game show, remember?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I would just say mainly let's hope for less injuries. And not on this episode, but we'll talk about it. We've had a lot of injuries, and like it's almost kind of ground our margin of error to a dust. So it's an important couple of weeks coming up. We gotta hope we win more ugly games like this until things get together.
Look, you need to win ugly games. There's nothing that absolutely is true, and there's going to be ugly wins every season. You always just look at the process of those wins and look at what's sustainable and what isn't. And when you just win playing ugly, bad football, that's not really sustainable. Although, in Real Madrid's case, they can win playing ugly football for years and years. I will say, so these are the bad things. The bad things are that there's still some confusion on offense, and some players are still getting in each other's way. The ability to deal with high pressing teams is still a nightmare, and that is not going to get better without Cruz, I don't think. The press is terrible. The defensive structure is really bad. And, the finishing hasn't been very good either, despite getting into some good goal scoring. Chances. Here's the good stuff. The good stuff is that we still haven't lost a league game or a game period since May of last season. We have a ton of players who are coming back from injury, and it can't get worse.
No, it can. If we drop any more points, that's why the next few weeks are so key. If we
It
drop,
gets worse if you drop points playing badly. Yeah. But I guess I'm when I say it can't get worse, I mean more like from a process standpoint. Like you can't really play worse than you're playing right now.
well, we were pretty much as bad at the start of last season. That's just the only icing on the cake, I'd say. It's just like last season we magically never dropped points. It's like,
well, that's the thing. Like I don't know how much we should comfort ourselves based on history, because I don't know. Like as much as it's true, like Real Madrid, they don't wake up until the springtime, generally speaking, and it's also part of the reason why we don't retain league titles. It's a huge problem. Like we just don't. You can get away with waking up in the springtime in the Champions League, but in the league you can't, because if there's too much of a gap to make up. You just can't make up for the gap. You can't. So we want to start retaining league titles more. We can't perform like this from the beginning of the season. We gotta wake up and get our shit together earlier. I just wanted to mention. So you said you're going to be back on Wednesday, right? After the game. The game's on Wednesday
or Tuesday or Wednesday.
The game's on Tuesday. Yeah, because we're doing. So Jose and Leah and I are both doing. All three of us are doing podcasts on Monday. That'll be free. Just wanted to turn everybody's attention over here to the screen. So hold on. There it is. So this is what you get if you're a content. All these episodes. It's just like an infinite amount of episodes right here. So if you want to join as a member, go to patreon.com/managingmadrid. You can get access to a ton of bonus content. That's where Matt and Lucas are mostly these days. They're with me, with our members. We're doing live calls. We're doing live Zoom calls as well once a month. If you don't have Patreon in your country, or for whatever reason you can't join, hit join underneath this video on YouTube on browser, or hit the memberships tab. And this is what you'll see. Members only videos, all this content. We look forward to seeing you there. Sid, it was good catching up with you. We'll see you after the Stuttgart game. And for everybody else, we'll see you guys on Monday. I'll be back. Jose will be back. And Leah will be back. And if you haven't already, go back and check out yesterday's podcast that Angelo and I did. We did a tiers ranking list. We went through every Real Madrid player on the squad, and we decided we want to keep them, sell them, or loan them. That's also up on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Sid, thank you. We'll see you guys on Monday. Peace out.